that as you progress along your career path and gain knowledge, you'll want to keep increasing your responsibilities. And for women, career advancement can be complicated, long hours, a myriad of responsibilities, senior roles, creating priorities that compete from living a fulfilling life outside the office, including a family. And I love this because I just came off a summit before coming on with the both of you to really learn and discover it. What is it as women for us to be focused on moving into this realm of being able to make it as per se? So I would love for you to just share what led you to start writing a book of this nature.
Well, I'll start. Grace and I met only when we first joined a board together. The two of us joined a public company retail board. And it's not that typical for two women to join at the same time. You know, women are still only about a third of corporate directors, at least in the US. So of course you notice each other. And I really respected her contributions in the room, and I kind of got to know her more through that professional lens initially. But as we got to know each other outside the boardroom, you know, we had drinks a couple of times, we were at dinners together. I realized that, you know, she had built an extremely successful career and had some of the same thoughts about what she tells other women who are coming up behind. And I was really feeling at that moment in my life that I wanted to start paying it forward, you know, and figure out a way to share some of these lessons. And so maybe Grace, you can take it from there.
You know, one of the things we had in common is that we were actually reflecting on the fact that, you know, when you've had a wonderful career and you've learned a lot, you really want to share those learnings, especially as we both had, you know, it's hard to call them, but millennial children, you know, they were at critical points in their life. They were starting to get into that middle management. And we really wanted to be able to transfer learnings and transfer some of the techniques and tools that we used, even though we recognize that they're on their own journeys.
And that's a powerful leadership legacy, right? Thinking about what do I do with all these learnings that I've had along my career? Go ahead, Christiana.
Well, and you know, as I'm sure you've seen, when you're doing a presentation or you're talking to a women's group or you're at you know, at some kind of summit, you can only distill so much into a 10 or 20-minute talk, right? And we always had someone who would raise their hand and ask, hey, how can I be you? How can I have your career? And, you know, the first answer is you got to have your own career. Trust me, it's going to be unique to you. But second, I have a lot of thoughts on that. And so being able to put those thoughts on paper, it was really Grace who nudged us at some point. We'd probably known each other 2 years at that point. And, you know, Grace texted me and said, we should write a book. And that had not occurred to me. I'll be honest. It had not occurred to me to write a book of, you know, sort of career life lessons for women. But once she said that, it was like, yeah, maybe we should write a book.
Yeah. How does it feel now that you have this book in your hands, knowing that people can use this as a reference? They can pass it on to generations to come. How does that feel for you right now?
I think that's a perfect way to describe it. You know, we really focused on writing a quality book that could be useful. Some people have referred to it as, you know, not just passing on the wisdom, but almost like a manual, something that can be practically used during your career as you go through different stages. And then the other thing I would say is that it's not the typical, you know, take your seat at the table book. It's very real, with real stories and with real tools from both of us, but also from a lot of other very interesting women that are sharing things that I think will be incredibly insightful.
And those insights are where we really learn from and grow. So how would you define that career forward mindset, and what benefits does it offer?
Yeah, so career forward mindset is our way of saying that you need to own your career path and that you need to be in the driver's seat of where you're trying to go. Because like any other kind of journey, if you're not in the driver's seat, somebody else is deciding what your destination is going to be. And I think I heard this, Debra, with one of your earlier guests who was saying, you know, she didn't have a career plan per se, but it's less about having some dogmatic plan that has, you know, 12 dot points when you're 17 years old kind of thing, and much more about having a destination. So we talk about The career forward mindset is about taking a long-term view and setting a cardinal direction for your career. And cardinal direction is that ultimate sense of, what am I passionate about? What do I like to do? Who do I want to work with? What kind of impact do I want to have on the world? That ought to be your North Star. But your career, like any GPS routing that you might take, can zig left and zig right depending on conditions, how things change, what your responsibilities are, what your health or your loved one's health situations are. That's the part that's going to change over time. But we want you to actually think about where you're trying to go so that you're making decisions with the long term in mind and not just optimizing for today's job.
Yeah, and I would add to that this, career forward and setting a cardinal direction is really rooted on self-assessment and being able to be introspective of where you are and where you want to go, and ambitious. What are your ambitions? What do you want to achieve? And you do it real time. You don't just put it off for, you get there when you achieve a certain title or a certain amount of money. You're actually living that in every stage of your career, and you're committed to your own evolution and your own growth. And we talk a lot about that in terms of thinking about how you set your cardinal direction and how you then measure yourself to see if you're on track for that.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Maybe just the tagline for a career forward mindset would be, your job is not your career. And for a lot of people, when you say that, it's a little bit of a head snap. Your job is important. Your job is your job right now. But if you just link together a series of jobs because you're going where opportunity took you, or where the next phone call comes from, or where the pay raise or the bigger title is, you're not necessarily building a career path. And we want people to understand that you've got to be loyal to yourself by deciding what it is you're trying to do and where you're trying to get, so that you can focus not just on your job and doing well today, but on that longer term career.
And I love that you bring that up, because I think sometimes we make these short-term decisions without really being intentional about where we want to go, who we want to show up as, and what is that leadership legacy we want to have. And when you say that we're just making decisions about where the raise took us, or then I think there comes a point in a career where people are like, and I've noticed this with some women, they hit, around 40 to 45, and suddenly it's like, is this all there is? Is this what I signed up for? And realizing that they hadn't been as intentional as they wanted to be as they were starting out in their careers.
Well, Grace has a phrase, I'll let her explain it, benevolent stagnation, which I absolutely loved, which really hits right at that point.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, do self-checks in terms of it. Some people are in jobs, and they may be in jobs, they may be getting great performance reviews. They may be making a good salary. They may like the title they're at. They may find their job is interesting or busy, but that can lead to a lot of stagnation if you're not challenging yourself on a bigger, frame of reference. And so what we're encouraging is that, we talk about this concept of a growth stock. If you have a mentality of a growth stock, imagine what a growth stock is. Think of whatever company you want, Apple, Microsoft in their early days. They're investing in future state capabilities. They're delivering and growing at a much higher and faster rate than their peer companies. And so when you take that mentality of a growth stock and you apply it to yourself, you're going to be avoiding stagnation, because you're going to be thinking about, how do I grow? How do I build capabilities? And not just for what you're doing today, but for your aspirations and for the direction that you want to take yourself. You're going to be thinking and reading the environment you're in and thinking about what's going to be valuable and how do I incorporate that capability to be accelerating my career journey. And so it's a very specific mindset that plays from the beginning of your career all the way through to the end.
Well, and I can give you a story just to make it real. And in Career Forward, Grace and I pepper it with our own stories, because we want you to know what we did, what we thought, what worked, what didn't work, right? So one of the stories in there about that moment in your career is mine, which is when I was 50, I had been in management consulting for 24 years already. And I was a senior partner, and I'd been a senior partner for 10 years. And even though my clients changed regularly and the teams I worked with would change, I was still doing basically the same kind of problem solving, the same kind of work, the same, kind of every day. And I've been doing that for 10 years. And I jumped from McKinsey Company to Nike Inc. and became the COO at that time and then the president of their direct-to-consumer division. And I had a lot of people tell me that I should be riding off into the sunset at that point because, you know, you make a decent amount of money by then. If you're careful with your money, you've probably got a good nest egg. And they couldn't figure out why at age 50, I would jump into the deep end of a very different swimming pool. But for me, I felt like I still had at least another career in me. One of my long-term goals in my cardinal direction was to be actually making decisions and leading something where the bottom line was mine. And as a consultant, I hadn't had that yet. And so I just thought, you know what, it's never too late. And I made that jump. And I have to tell you, it was the most energizing and exciting next 10 years that I could ever have imagined. And I'm so grateful I did it. And I want to encourage other women to just say, it's never too late, right? If you haven't reached those goals, if you're not at your cardinal direction yet, change up your route. You can get there.
And I love that you said how energizing it is, right? Because it's, you know that you have much more meaningful work to do. You know that there's an impact that you want to make. And knowing that there's still more in you to give, right? And I think that resonates with many women that I've even spoken with. They're like, there's still more for me. I just haven't figured it out. And I have to jump into this question because I love SOAR. And I would love for you to share, because it just fits into this part of the conversation, explaining the SOAR method and how it's significant as that self-assessment to kind of have a better idea. What is it that I truly want for myself? I'll let you ladies take that away.
So I'll start on that. I think, you know, the tool of SOAR that we talk about is really important, but it starts with the fact of no matter how well you're doing in your career, the growth comes from taking assessment. Am I on track? And so the SOAR tool, and it's a very clear tool, really makes you assess if you are tracking to your aspirations and goals. So the S is for strengths. Take inventory. You're growing, you're learning, you're gaining new capability every day. Where are your strengths? What are the things you're becoming known for? What are the new skills that you have that can be leveraged? And then look for O, which is opportunities. Where can I apply those strengths? What's in demand? Where can I potentially broaden my scope or look at additional opportunities in or outside of your company? And then actions. One of the things we talk about in Career Forward is you're at the wheel of your career. You're driving. It's not your company. It's not your boss. It's you. And so what actions can you take to achieve, you know, where you feel you need to get more traction? And then last is, you know, look around. Okay, keep your head up. Are there red flags? Are there things changing in your environment that potentially could derail you and or slow you down in progressing? And then think strategically of how do you tackle those, and are there ways to avoid those or to work around those?
And it's
Perfect.
important for people to do that. Go ahead, Christiana.
I agree. We've seen people get blindsided in their careers because either they missed an opportunity, somebody else got it, they just didn't recognize it when it was knocking at the door, or they weren't taking actions ahead of time to build some skills that ended up being critical to the field that they were in, or they missed the red flags. You know, could be your company's financial performance, it could be some progress reviews you're getting that are kind of flattening out, a lot of different things. The whole point, as Grace said, is to do the work to ask yourself these questions. And we'd suggest you do it at least once a year.
I'm glad you said that, because the next thing was, how often should we be doing those self-assessments, right? Because I think we don't self-assess enough. Even when people are, you know, running their even personal finances, sometimes they don't look until the end of the month, maybe tax season even. And it's like, oh my gosh, I could have made all these decisions so much earlier had I had the information.
Well, we also feel like, you know, particularly earlier in your career, someone else is doing a performance review of you once a year, right? Someone else, or maybe twice a year, is sitting down and telling you how you're doing against the goals they set for you. What we want to do, again, in that notion of putting yourself in control of your career, is we want you to take that same opportunity to decide for yourself, what are the actions that you need to commit to and what are the things that you need to watch out for.